Hello and welcome to another Get Good at Business highlight. I am your host and business coach, Taylor Proctor, here to help you get good at business so you can get back into the heart of why you got into business in the first place. And I'm so excited to be joined by Becky Aste today because she is an incredible business owner, and I'm so excited to dive into the areas of her business within the I Move method. And if you're not familiar with the I Move method, that is how we get good at business and get back into the heart of why we got into business in the first place by using this method, which stands for intuition, marketing, operations, velocity, and execution. So, Becky, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Taylor. I'm excited to talk.
So, Becky is a wife, mom of two, somatic practitioner, trauma informed marriage coach, and the host of Your Breakthrough Blueprint, a top 5% globally ranked podcast. After spending a decade researching and going through every mainstream modality of healing to save her own marriage, she found herself 2 kids later, separated from her husband and on the verge of divorce. At the final hour, somatic work took her marriage from dying to thriving in less than a year. And Becky has made it her mission to get this into the hands of every woman possible ever since. Becky, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have you on the show today because not only is it this business piece, but I think that there's a lot of women who can deeply resonate with what you went through and how you help women go through that today. So, obviously, there's a little bit of that pivotal moment shared in your bio and your background. But can you share how that realization and that experience inspired you to create I Do Breakthrough and help those wives repair and strengthen their marriages?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that pivotal moment, I really stumbled upon somatic work. It was the one stone I hadn't unturned. And somatic just means pertaining to the body, especially in contrast to the mind. I had tried all of the mainstream modalities neck up, talking through things, thinking, reading, verbal processing, auditory, EMDR, da 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 da. So, learning how our body keeps the score of the trauma we've survived, and that there's a way to go into the body to move trauma out. Yeah, that was the game changer that I would say was the pivotal moment where the idea to start a business was birthed in the ethers, but not in my mind yet. At that point, I was just like, oh my God, I'm just grateful that this is saving my marriage. What's happening? This is a miracle. So it was much delayed that it was this maybe a year later, this intersection of marriage thriving. My previous career had reached its expiration date, and there was this $33 masterclass invitation from a coach that I had been following for a while, who ended up becoming to go on to be my coach and then change my life. So I'd say that was the actual intersection of like, okay, it's business time. I'm saying goodbye to this previous chapter and I'm going to learn how to get this into the hands of everyone else.
I love that. And I love that for so many reasons. One, you went through it and it wasn't like an immediate, oh, this helped me, I can use it to help others, but really that like intuitively led, now it's time to dive into it and get this into hands of women everywhere. Which is the perfect segue into the first of our I Move categories, which is intuition. So it sounds like there's some intuitive hits coming through to start the business, but how do you incorporate intuition into your coaching approach as you guide your clients towards that connection and that healing?
Intuition is super important to me because I had a completely severed sense of connection with my own intuition before stumbling upon somatic work. And I think that was the big game changer in why our marriage did end up being salvaged, because I learned from somebody for the first time how to tune into my intuition, how to trust my intuition, how to hear it, and then how to act upon it, which is a whole nother thing. A lot of women are like, I hear my intuition loud and clear, but acting on it is another a whole nother topic. So it is the vibe that I set with my clients from the beginning. I tell them all, I'm your guide, I'm not your guru. This journey that you're about to go on is a mirror, and you're going to get out of this what you put into it. But what we call this kind of work here is it's a do it with you program, not a do it for you. I don't want to be the one offering you a ton of advice and telling you what to do. I'm going to be asking way more questions to help point you to your own intuition, figure out what's best for you, your own situation. And so we do have an entire module dedicated to intuition. We teach clients how to feel what intuition feels like in their own body. But that's really the crux. And it's typically the number one thing torturing my clients when they come to me. It's like, should I stay or should I go? They've heard tons of unsolicited advice, plenty. They need no more of that. That actually clouds out their intuition. And so we really dial in on the difference between ego and intuition and teaching them how to trust that.
Oh, I cannot like raise my hands, drop the mic enough. Like that is so incredible. And I love that you've really highlighted and pinpointed in like that's the number one thing. They've received all this advice. They aren't listening to themselves. And so to make that such an important crux and piece of what you're doing, I think that's incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, I wish I had found it years and years and years ago.
So let's move to the M of I move, which is all about marketing, right? How do you reach what innovative and unconventional methods of marketing have you used to really reach and connect with that target audience who's heard everything and it sounds like very similar to you like this is that last chance kind of thing. How do you really connect and communicate with those individuals through your marketing?
Yeah, it's interesting because for so many years I've been in leadership roles, and there can be this tendency to put your best foot forward, right? You're the leader, people are looking at you. This is really the first time on the marketing front. I'm like, I'm going to put my worst foot forward. Like, I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to just share the raw details of where I was in my most hopeless pit, because that's where people who are looking for help are, when they stumble across my Instagram or whatever. And so what I found is the authenticity really cuts through the noise. There is so much noise. There are a bazillion relationship coaches. And so if I can just be authentic and be vulnerable, really that's the quote unquote strategy. But I am very, very clear on who my ideal client is. I have like a whole Word document written on, I have a nickname for her, like what she does during her day, where she frequents, like what lights her up, what drains her. And so I'm very clear on who she is so that anytime I put something out there marketing wise, like I know exactly who I'm talking to. And I also am very, very clear on where she hangs out. So I had to do a lot of market research and testing. Like, my ideal girl isn't on Facebook as much. She is more on Instagram. And so figuring out what platforms she hangs out on. And then using her language in what I say, when it comes to marketing, I don't want to come off preachy, teachy, da 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 da, anything of that vibe. Like, I really want them to see my content and be like, oh my God, I said that exact thing to my best friend last night. Like, did she bug my apartment? So I would say that. And then probably the most unconventional secret that I like to let people know about is I do have a kick-ass marketing team. There's a man that I work with, Sareem, who lives in Colombia, and he's able to outsource me and find me VAs for only $5 an hour. So I pay $5 USD, but to them with the conversion rate, they're making great money. These like very qualified people that he's able to find me. And so that is like a hidden secret that a lot of the wealthiest, business owners, they utilize that conversion rate to really help their own profit margins.
Yeah, I love that. And then that's a great segue too into our operations, right? The O of I move, because that's an operational support, right? It's delegation, it's being smart with your finances and not taking advantage of, but the conversion rate, they're getting paid very well. They're happy they're able to work with you. So what other operational frameworks or systems have you used to really help grow and develop your business?
I do love group coaching because one, it is scalable, but also with the kind of work that I do, it's the most healing piece.
Mhm.
Relationship ruptures are the deepest ruptures that like all of us have been through, but also that can be the deepest secret sauce to healing is within relationships. And so I do group coaching. How the program runs, practically is we have 2 calls a week, modules they can go through at their own pace, 24/7 access to all of our coaches and peers through, we use Circle as a platform. And then they get a monthly one-on-one call with their coach. So they have the group, but they aren't lost in the mix because they also, have their one-on-one bestie, cheerleader, support coach through the program.
Mm.
Uh, So, as far as like the client journey, when they come in, they get their welcome email that's very, very basic and clear because they're overwhelmed, right? They just made an investment, and there's always like, what did I just do? An element of that. So, the email is very clear to the point with one welcome video, a form to fill out, and then they can book their onboarding call with their client support coach and start showing up to, our group calls wherever they land, come into the program. So I put a lot of my energy, resources, time focused on the client experience. I believe it's the most important part of a business. When people ask, are you successful? My mind first goes to not revenue, not numbers. Like, yes, that's an indicator of success and a point. But for me, the greatest indicator of success is, are my clients actually transforming? Are they happy? Are they getting the support they need? And so that's where a lot of my energy is focused.
So, in that focusing of energy, what other strategies do you use to add that velocity to your business, especially within, you mentioned it's a pretty competitive landscape, right? There's a lot of marriage, coaching, wellness, relationship type of things out there. And obviously, you're doing something right and something different. But what other strategies have you used to implement and add that velocity to your business?
Yeah, beyond the authenticity, the free training that I offer everyone, if they come into my space, this is something I always try to get into the hands of any new visitor person in my community. I have a short 20-minute webinar, Three Secrets to Thriving Intimacy. And it's basically in short 20 minutes, my entire story, why this is so different, how I saved my marriage in 8 weeks and could have avoided a decade of therapy, honestly. And it gets into why what everyone is doing is keeping them stuck at best or re traumatized at worst. And so I geek out a little bit about the nervous system and why nervous system is so important. Why, if you're not going into the body and ignoring the body, you're going to feel like a salmon swimming upstream. So it's all in that one, little webinar, which is where you can find my landing page. It's also an option to opt into my email, marketing, and it directs them to my podcast. So between that webinar and my podcast, which has become a key resource for me, that is what I'm sending everyone next in the DMs, people who are, coming to me and asking for help. Once they've got that webinar, I ask them a little more specifically, like, what are your specific challenges? What are you dealing with? Because I have a podcast episode for everything. And
Right.
then that might help them, just that one podcast, exactly what they need. They can wipe their hands, good, they're on their way and done. Others, that has become a lifeline, is having that podcast in their ear, and they Netflix binge, and through that time are getting massive value, but they're also growing to really trust me and feel like I've become a friend and asset to them because I'm in their ear, sharing very vulnerably and authentically what I've picked up along the way. So I'm big on delivering massive value, no gatekeeping. I offer a lot of free stuff. And then if people want to go to the next level and, work with me, get inside the container, then that's obviously available.
Right. I love that. And that webinar is actually what is linked in our session description, our description here today, right?
Yep, that's the one.
Beautiful. So you guys can click that link, go check out that webinar. Becky mentioned it's 20 minutes, and it sounds like that is a great, informative, helpful first step. So, Becky, last thing here within the I move method is the E, which is execution. So, share with us a major initiative or big project that you're currently prioritizing and focusing on.
Yeah, this is kind of secret. So you guys are the first to hear it. So it's really, a lot of coaches, they have a main program, sometimes a back end offer. And I always balked at the idea of doing that. Honestly, I've always for years just focused on the main Root to Rise program I have. One, because I had a terrible experience with a coach who had a back end offer. I did well in her first, course, and then she invited me into her second. And when I said no to it, it was traumatic to say the least. How she responded to that, it was terrible, like, experience. Almost kept me from investing in online business coaching after that, because I'm like, if this is what the space is like, I'm not about it. So I've hesitated because of that. And then also, I just didn't want to do something for the sake of the money. The third is, I don't want to do something just because it worked for this person over here, or my current coach, or is the logical next step. Like, the timing had to feel right and intuitive. So it's funny the timing of you asking me this, because just at the beginning of this month, the idea dropped into my head. Oh my gosh, I have an idea. I want to build, this second offer. And then the next day, my current business coach was like, "Hey, how about that back end offer we haven't talked about in like a year?" And I was like, "Oh, funny timing." And then that same week, had three separate clients be like, "Hey, is there a possible you could create something for us like after we graduate? Like, we want to stay close to you, stay in your world." And so I was like, "Okay, ding, ding, ding." So this is going to be a program designed for a woman who's already put out the fire, so to speak, in her marriage, that is taking up all of her energy, her creativity, and she's ready to really dial in on breakthroughs in her purpose, in her parenting, in her profit, and in her physical well-being. So I do love alliteration. So this is what I'm going to spend the third week of July on, a silent little retreat with me and one of my business colleagues at an Airbnb in the woods. And I'm just going to ask for downloads of this program, record it there. And that's the secret. Now the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for sharing that with us first. And I love that it's so finally aligned and intuitively led, and to the point where everyone's like asking for it. That's exactly what we want, right? So, oh, congratulations. And thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you, Taylor.
Awesome. Well, Becky, thank you again for being here on the show. We've already talked about the webinar a little bit, but I want to highlight that for our audiences here at the end. If there's a way that they can connect with you, get those first touch points, it is that webinar. Why don't you share with us a little bit more about what they can expect to get from that?
Yeah, it's really gonna offer you the three things I wish I had known 10 years ago, before my marriage really stuff hit the fan. And so, if I could save anyone else a decade of what I went through, this is really what I have strained out and just distilled into this short webinar. And so, after that, if you need extra support, it'll direct you to the podcast. That's a free community, tons of free value, like I said. Or if you want to book a call with our team, you can apply to speak with us. Currently, our books are full, but we're taking applications. And if you seem like a good fit, then we'll squeeze you in.
Excellent. So that is at idobreakthrough.com/webinar dash registration, where you can get that link. And that link is also in our video description here. So you can just do a quick click and go right to that webinar, register, and be in Becky's space and have additional ways to contact her. So, Becky, thank you again so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you pulling back the curtain on how you work within your business within the areas of I Move. And for those of you watching, make sure that you stay tuned. We will have more Get Good at Business highlights coming for you in the future. So, thanks again, Becky, and everyone else. Remember that you can get good at business.